Let's welcome back. From toddlers to teenagers, there's nothing as satisfying for parents as watching your child forging good, positive friendships with other children. But what happens when these relationships fall apart?
Parent coach Aoife Lee is here with advice on when we should stick our beaks in and when we should just leave them out. Good morning, Aoife.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Great to have you on. So talk to us about friendships and why they are so important.
It's always a big aspect for families and parents, because as our kids start to grow and evolve and develop, kind of from those early years, all they want is the companion to play with, have a bit of fun, but connections can start to naturally grow unbeknownst to themselves. And as they get older, I suppose you'll find that they start to develop that those different kind of traits and qualities around supporting friendships, showing loyalty, respect, something that we all strive for in adult friendships even. But, you know, it's very natural for kids to fall out, whether it be with individuals, it could be their best mate, or in a peer group. And that's often where it can start to get tricky to navigate through, because it's tough then for the adults not get involved. And it's protecting that piece there as well.
OK, those peer groups, they tend to develop as the child is getting closer to teenage years.
Yeah, well, I've got 3 kids myself. They've all gone through primary and into post-primary. And often with teenagers or pre-teens, you know, they strive for acceptance. Yeah. Even our smaller kids, they want to fit in. Nobody really wants to stand out, although I am so inspired by kids that don't care. But it's a really important part, and there's that fear of missing out as well. But naturally, our kids can grow apart. They can start looking for different things in friendships, and they start to develop their own identity. And they know what they like, they know who they can connect with, they know who they can clash with. So that's often where you see the murky waters or waves start to form. But it's important that that is a natural part of our children's development. It's just, again, managing that and how we can support our kids in the best way we can, you know?
Yeah, I suppose because children start with their relationships in the household with their parents, with possible siblings, and then when they make relationships outside the home, it's a completely different ballgame, really, isn't it? What kind of skills are good for children when they're forming relationships like that?
Well, it does. You mentioned there at home, it all starts with us, the adults. Yeah. It's the values and those skill set, and it's, you know, I know we hear about being kind to one another, but it is understanding that important skill of empathy, understanding how others might feel in a situation, and it's a really powerful and empowering and safe place is to start those conversations at home, because that's what can impact how our kids start to communicate and how they treat others in school or within that peer group. So while we want to make sure that our kids are treating other people well, it's kind of how we speak to each other at home too. Because no one likes to think of their child being cruel or saying nasty things, but it does happen. It does happen. And for the most part, our kids, you know, it is important for them to experience those challenging experiences, as uncomfortable as it is. And for any of us now, and as adults, when we're pushed out of our comfort zone, it's not nice, but there's real learning in that as well. Yeah. And I don't say that flippantly, because our kids need to experience those rough times to come out the other side. And that's what can build their confidence and that resilience that we often hear about.
The ability to problem solve.
Yeah. Problem solve, yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes, you know, like parents can kind of fight the fight for the child rather than giving the child the means or the skills to deal with problems.
It's very hard not to get emotionally involved, and often parents and carers will say, you know, what can we do? My child is coming home and they're really upset and it's really emotional. And what can often happen is, for the adults, we will get anxious for our child. We will get angry to the person that's treating them that way. And when it gets to that point, sometimes it's hard then to be present for our children in the moment, and they need us to be their anchor. They need us to be their calm. So it's essentially coming in and supporting them in a calm way and acknowledging and validating the tough time they're having and what might be going on, but then exploring well, what can you do? How can you approach, and what can you say to that child? And that's where it can be a lot more effective than getting really angry, because our kids will pick up on our own anxiety and our worries, and then it often will reinforce, okay, this is something I actually need to be really worried about, and I need to, of course, fight my corner, but it's how we do that.
So remain calm.
Yes, but how does a parent recognise when is the time to stand in? Like, you know, they could be worried about intervening too soon. When should they step in?
Obviously, if it becomes, you know, if it's emotionally, if there's emotional turmoil, if your child is becoming quite anxious, or obviously if it's physical, and that's really zero tolerance for that. I would often kind of suggest to go and speak with the teacher, see kind of and observe the dynamics. It's approaching child and parent is the last option. And there's no right or wrong. There's no correct formula. It just depends on the situation and the nature of what's going on. But it is knowing, you know, assuring your child that you have their back. But it is that they need to explore and manage it first of all. Because if we could keep coming in and taking over, it doesn't allow them the ability and opportunity to, you know, manage it themselves. Okay. And there, you know, can be situations where that can be.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the parents of children who say are on the spectrum.
Yeah.
And one of the big things for parents who have children on the spectrum is that those kids, if they're looked upon within a school situation by their peers as different, they could be pushed out and become isolated, and it's very hard for a parent not to fight the fight for their child then.
Absolutely, and I think that can be extremely challenging. I suppose now, as we're seeing so much diversity and difference, it's something that in the schools it is being conversed. Like, I have friends with children that are on the spectrum, and I've been having conversation with them, and they're saying, you know what, their child has been celebrated in the classroom, and people and kids are really admiring kids that are different and are a lot more aware. But like that, it's how we make these and have these conversations in the home. We have a huge responsibility to how we communicate with our children behind closed doors, for them to, you know, celebrate.
We need to build that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Aoife, thank you so much for coming and chatting to us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Still to come, we'll be hearing how the HSE Hair Peace Grant has given one woman a new lease of life.
Plus, we've lamb kebabs in the kitchen and bridal fashion on the catwalk. Stay with us for Live Until 12.